this. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, away the shall I go. Anybody know that song? Sing that song because back in the old church, it was a cry for help. Because in the old church, when we sung that song, the atmosphere would change. Because somebody needed help from God. And must I suggest this morning, I believe there's many in here today this morning that has been crying out to God. And say, God, I need your help. Anybody this morning talking about I need your help? Anybody there? And so, there's a cry for help. And I want to talk about that cry because as long as you live, you will live in a world that's filled with trouble and crisis. And that song, let me share with you, that song has some meat in it, amen. I like Kirk Franklin and I listen to his praise song, but every now and then I need a song that got some meat on it. Because sometimes I need help from the Lord, amen. So when I looked at that, I want to talk about a cry for help because I want to also remind us that be careful how you treat folk because you never know who God will send your way to help you. Because all of us will have seasons where we need some help. And if you have some friends and family members that will be there with you in your crisis time, let me tell you, you are blessed. I'm not talking about a whole lot of folk. I'm just talking about if you got 2 or 3 that will be there with you, you are so blessed. But I want to remind us that with all that there are some problems and crises that even our friends can't help us out of. Amen. But today I want to tell you that there is a God that can come to your rescue if you cry out to him. That when life gets rough and overwhelming, the God we serve will hear our cry, no matter what you're going through.
Yes, thank you, Lord.
God can hear your cry. And when I look at biblical history, I thought about Hannah, who her womb was shut up and couldn't have any children, and her adversary, Peninnah, would tease her, talking about, nah, you can't have no children, and then in the up-to-date version of it, she would even tease her, talking about, I got your man, amen. Somebody read it, it's in 1 Samuel. But she goes to God and cries out, say, God, I need your help. And God heard her cry. When I thought about Hezekiah's life was going to be cut short, and Hezekiah goes to the wall and talks to God, and God heard Hezekiah's cry, that he gave Hezekiah 15 more years. Because God will hear his children's cry. If you belong to God, God will hear you. Then I thought about Peter, who was on the water and he was sinking, and as he sunk, because of his lack of faith, then all of a sudden he cries out, Lord, save me. And God was right there and heard his cry. And so we serve a God that when life gets tough, we can call on him and he will hear our cry. Can I tell you, I can tell you for sure, for true, that he'll hear our cry, because we wouldn't be here right now. That if God hadn't heard our cry.
Amen.
Because how many times you called on God before and the Lord came through? Amen. And so if he came through then, we serve the same God that will hear your cry and still can come through right now. So I want to talk about this text. Man, this text blessed me. This psalm is written by David. David is favored. Watch this. He's favored by God. And yet, when I looked at his favor on his life, I'm confused. Because how can you have favor and still have trials?
All right.
Let me say that again. How can he be favored? Because we all talk about we favored by God. How can you be favored and still have trials? Sounds like an oxymoron or juxtaposition. That there's a contrast between favor and trouble. David is favored by God, and yet he has trouble 73 times, because 73 different times he writes the Psalms. And so I had to change my thinking on favor.
Yeah.
Because I want to tell you, favor is not the exemption of trials and tribulations.
All right.
But what favor is, favor says that when I go through something, God will be with me. Amen. I'm excited about that, because no matter what you're going through, God says, I will be there. He says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Lord, I'm with you always, even till the ends of the earth. I want to tell you your favor, because no matter what you're going through, the God is right there. Sometimes you might not feel it because you got emotions going on, but I want to tell you, God is right there. Sometimes you don't feel like he's right there. Maybe you ain't been in church in a while, but I want to tell you that he's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. God is still there. And the fact of the matter, God never leaves us. Sometimes we leave him, but he never leaves us. So David writes this text. He has this problem and predicament in verse 2. His whole problem is centered around verse 2. Look at your Bible, because we're going to look at this. Centered around verse 2. Get my phone back on the floor. David says, my heart is overwhelmed. Say that again. He says, my heart is overwhelmed.
Yes.
That's my question. Anybody been there?
Yes.
When life has overwhelmed you, when your finances are so bad that you rob Peter and Paul and James and the disciples, that your finances are so bad that life can overwhelm you. Maybe you caught hell on your job and it can overwhelm you because you wonder, if I say something that I want to say, I may not be able to keep my job. Life can overwhelm you. Maybe it's health issues, because as you get older, life can change in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye. You can feel good right now. In 5 minutes, you can be on your way to the hospital. Life can overwhelm us at any time. And in this text, David was overwhelmed. Don't know if it's one problem or a whole lot of problems. But he gives us a prescription when we look at this text, how to deal with life when we're overwhelmed. So I want to walk you through this real quick, because he gives us 4 things that he pursues. I usually have 3, but I looked at this text. It's so profound that he gives us 4 things that he pursues while he's overwhelmed. I want to help you real quick. If you ever become overwhelmed, there's about 4 things you need to do while you're struggling, while you're going through, while your kids are acting a fool, while the marriage is unstable, while your health is fleeting or failing. he reminds us that there are 4 things in this text that you ought to do and ought to pursue. First thing he tells me, the first thing you ought to pursue is in verse 1. You see it? It's prayer. He says that when I'm overwhelmed, the first thing I must do is get in touch with the Master. Isn't it amazing that we try to get in touch with everybody else and everybody else don't have no power? He says the first thing I want to cry out to God, and the first thing I want to let us know is that the first thing we ought to do is pursue an avenue of prayer. As believers, if there's anything we ought to know how to do is pray. How do I know how to pray? I'm gonna tell you right quick. The greatest teacher of prayer is trials. Let me say this again. You might not know how to pray now, and when I was younger, I prayed different at 18 than I did at 57. Amen. Because when you're younger, you pray some elementary prayers depending on what your situation is. But soon as you get a job, soon as you have some children, soon as you got bills to pay, your prayer life will change. Any witnesses in the house? When I first started was now lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord our soul will keep. Will I die before I wake? I pray the Lord that my soul will take. I'm going to sleep. But now that I got some responsibilities in life, my prayer ain't no 30-second prayer. There's some times I must tell Jesus all of my troubles. I cannot bear these burdens alone. I want to tell you the first thing that you ought to do is pray. Talk to God. Because there's power in prayer. You might not can do something, but if you talk to the man that can do something, he can do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think. There is power in prayer. Prayer can heal the sick. Prayer can raise the dead. Prayer can open blind eyes. I know y'all saying, oh, Pastor, that's Old Testament. But when I look in the house this morning, I can say the same thing. Prayer can heal the sick. Is there anybody in the house been healed this year or last year? Prayer can raise the dead. I look at Brother Miller and I realize they took a heart in and put it back out and put it back in. God honors and answers prayer. And you got to know the value of prayer. Prayer works. Prayer changes things. Prayer also changes me that if it does not change, God will change me to handle whatever come in my way. You got to know how to pray. Thank God for prayer. That when I pray, God has this thing that he understands that when I pray, it's not like caller ID. Because some people you call, they see your number and they don't answer. But when I pray, God can answer your prayer and my prayer and your prayer and your prayer and your prayer at the same time. When I call, he sees my number and then he recognizes that's the son that called me 5 minutes ago. Amen. Some of you ain't called him in weeks, but I want you to keep on living. Trials and tribulations will get you on your knees to talk to the Almighty God. I'm glad this prayer thing works because I can call him early in the morning. I ain't got to wake him up because he never sleeps or never slumbers. I can call him at the midday hour and not worried about God taking a lunch break. I can call him late in the midnight hour. Anybody glad you can talk to God any time of the day and he will hear your cry? Yes. He tells me you got to pursue prayer. And the older I get, the more I pray. They used to tell me, pray. When I was younger, they said, pray. And I'm like, oh yeah. Then I started learning. Get a house note, you'll pray. Get a car note, you'll pray. Get some kids.
There you go, right there.
You'll pray.
Yeah.
Wait till the kids get about 18 or 19. You'll pray. Prayer is a regular conversation with God. First thing he does is pursues prayer.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody say he pursues prayer.
Pursues prayer.
Say it again, he pursues prayer.
Pursues
Prayer.
Tell your neighbor you ought to pursue prayer.
Pursue prayer.
Okay, watch this. Number 2, he pursues the presence of God. Woo! I studied this, Miss Carolyn, and I said to myself, I thought that when you praying, you're also in his presence. That you're pursuing his presence. Studied, and I said, God, the Holy Spirit got to show me. That's not necessarily so. So what I need is to show you this. I always got to get class participation. Amen. Robert, come here. Amen. Give it up for Robert. Give it up for Robert. Amen. All right. And I need a young lady to come up here. Anybody want to volunteer for me? Young lady? Come on. Come on, Jeanette. Stay right there. Okay, good. Stay right there. 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 Come here, Robert. So what he does, he says, in verse 2 and verse 3, he says, God, I need to have a rock
Yeah, yeah.
that's higher than me. Verse 1, he prays, right?
Yep.
But verse 2 and 3, he's yearning for the presence. There is a difference. So let me show you the difference real quick. So here's Robert. His mama ain't here, but you go act like his mama today, all right? So imagine Robert being about 6 years younger, right? Robert goes outside and he skins his knee, and his knee is all bloody, right? So what he does, he calls out to his mama and he says, Mama, I hurt my knee. That's prayer. Y'all got what I'm saying? Because prayer is the request. Mama, my knee hurt. Mm-hmm. That's what he would do, right?
Yeah.
But what he's yearning for, while he tells his mama the request, now he needs mama's presence. Yeah. Any mama boys in the house, amen. Mama boy, you tell mama what to do, and you tell her that she's hurt, that you're hurting. But now he needs mama's presence. Mm-hmm. Come here, mama. That Robert doing good too, boy. Now watch this. When mama come, what does mama do? Now he's in the presence of mama, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, now you sit up. Now what mama gonna do? Mama gonna put her arms around. No, mama gonna put the arms around the baby, and mama gonna say, everything gonna be all right. Y'all got that?
Yep.
Because what he's yearning for is the presence of mama. Now watch this. Let me help somebody real quick, and then I'll go back to text. Because it's something about being in mama's presence that a few minutes ago my knee was hurting and bleeding, but now when I get in the presence of mama, I forget about my knee bleeding because I'm in the presence of mama. And now mama done hug me, mama done kiss me, and mama let me know everything will be all right. And that's how God is. When I get in the presence of God, God is bigger than my problems. And then all of a sudden when I start worshiping with God, I start worrying about my knee because I'm in the presence of God, because I recognize God is bigger than my problems. I wish I had somebody to have right there. Y'all get what I'm saying? He's yearning, David's yearning for the presence of God. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Because there's a difference. The prayer says, I can tell God what I want, but the presence says, I need him. And have you ever been wounded by life? And all of a sudden, this just me. Have you ever been hurt or troubled by life? And you get in your car and you're crying. But then you start having church all by yourself. Because the presence of God will come in that little Cadillac or that hoopty you got. And then all of a sudden you shout, you forgot all about your problems. Because you know that God will work it out because you already talked to God. Anybody ever been there? Sometimes you ought not wait to get to church to have church. Sometimes you ought to learn how to have church by yourself. Amen. And sometimes when I have church by myself, the presence of God is all in the car, all in the shower. Won't he do it? He'll come by and sit with you and let you know everything will be all right. That's what he was doing. He was yearning for the presence.
Hallelujah.
As the deer panted for the water, I need his presence. I can tell him what I'm going through, but I want to feel his presence. Watch this, real quick. His presence is all around, but what I want to do is feel his presence. What are you saying? Sometimes my mind is clouded with all the trials and tribulations of life. And sometimes when I'm crying out to God, God, I want to feel your presence. Have you ever come to church and ain't felt his presence? Have you ever been home and never felt his presence? And sometimes you say, if I could just feel his presence, I know everything will be all right. That's why we can shout when we feel his presence. Because don't take for granted you can feel his presence all the time. But when I feel his presence, I can tell you I feel better.
Hallelujah.
I feel better.
Hallelujah.
Just to talk with Jesus makes everything all right. So in verse 2 and 3, he reminded me, I'm not just pursuing his prayer, I'm pursuing his presence. Because when he puts his arms around me, he says, you are my strong tower. You're my protector. So when you sit with me, I know you got my back. That's why that's why sometimes you shout when you feel his presence. Because every now and then, with all you're going through, you need to know that God has your back. And when you feel his presence, then you're going to say, yes, I'm all right. Because I know he has my back. So he pursues prayer. He pursues his presence, right? Look at verse 4. I love it. Verse 4, and this is really good. He pursues the fellowship with the people of God in the tabernacle.
Hallelujah.
When you're going through, the job of the enemy is to isolate you so you can feel like you're all by yourself. Anybody watch Animal Planet? I'm the only one here. And when the lion is trying to get the zebras or whatever he's trying to get, he always gets the last one. The one that's isolated. So as long as they stay together, the animal can't get the weakest link. But when you get one by themselves, the lion goes, or whatever animal it is, and he gets the weakest link because he's in isolation. When you are going through some stuff, the enemy wants you to feel isolated so he can put some stuff in your mind. Beware of the tricks of the enemy. Because he'll tell you stuff like, the church don't care about you. Those people don't care about you. That is nothing but the enemy. So watch this. David says this. David says, watch this. Verse 1, 2, 3. David does private worship. He prays. He's pursuing the presence. But after private worship, it ought to spill over into corporate worship. Oh, I'm preaching better than you look. Boy, that's good. Because we got bad theology there that I don't need to come to church. Well, that's a lie. If Jesus said, upon this rock I'll build my church, if the church is important to Christ, it ought to be important to us. And so he says, verse 4, he says, I want to go to the tabernacle. I want to go where other believers are. I'm struggling, but I want to go where other believers are. Why? Because when I'm struggling, there may be a song that the choir might sing to encourage me. There may be a smile from the usher board that will encourage me or the greeters, there may be somebody in church that may be going through the same thing. And then if I hear the testimony of other believers, then I realize if God did it for them, he can do the same thing for me. I gotta go where other believers are, so we can pour into one another. Let me say this again. So we can pour into each other. It is not just my job to pour into you. It's our job to pour into each other. Let me work this real quick. Y'all make me work a little harder. Watch this. When you sit down next to somebody in church, you ought to pour into them. I'm teaching now. Pastor, how do you pour it? You can at least start out with a smile. Help me, somebody. You can at least start out with good morning. How you doing? The text says we're called to minister to one another. So it ain't that you come and get all you can get. You pour into somebody because you don't know the person you're sitting next to. You don't know what they're going through.
Glory to God. Thank you.
Just a smile will encourage them. Let me teach for a second. I got 5 minutes. James Field. And I told James, I said, James, you bless me on Sunday morning. Some Sundays I'm struggling. I may have had a hard week. James will come, park right here, Pastor, smile, get out, wave, and then all of a sudden I start feeling like, man, that's a blessing that somebody would think enough about you.
Amen.
And I said, you don't know you ministered to me right before I get in the house. You don't know what anybody going through. And let me help you. You're not the only one going through. And so we're called to minister to one another. Conversation, a smile. So David goes into the tabernacle because, number one, we're called to minister to one another. Don't ever come to church thinking, I'm going to see what I'm going to get. Come to church, see what I can give.
Amen. Amen.
What can I give to somebody else? How can I help somebody? Because that's ministry. So he pursues the tabernacle. I got to get where other believers are. Because, let me do this real quick. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Just by a show of hands. Show of hands. Just show of hands. I ain't going to ask you this. How many of y'all have had a rough week this week? Just by show of hands. If you had a good week, that's good. That's a whole lot of folk. Now watch this. Everybody raise their hand. Do you know that you're sitting next to them? And you don't know the person that you're sitting next to, you don't know what they've gone through. So what happens is, you come in sad, the next person come in sad. Well, let me help this real quick. The whole row is sad. Then y'all sing and you wonder why the whole row is sad. Amen. Or while we preaching, the whole row is sad. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Because sometimes there's a heaviness in the house because a lot of people have gone through something. But it only takes a smile or a handshake. Say, man, I'm praying for you.
Yeah.
I want to encourage you. All right, thank you, Holy Spirit. I'm going to finish this and then I got an assignment because now Holy Spirit didn't change this thing. All right, so we pursue prayer, we pursue the presence, we pursue fellowship with believers. Last thing, what he does in verse 8, he pursues praise. Y'all see it?
Yep.
What he does, he says, I'm going to praise you.
Every day.
I know I'm going through, but I'm going to praise you anyhow. Let me say that again. I know I'm going through, but he says, I'm going to praise you anyhow. If you read the following verse, he said, because I promised you a long time ago, I'm going to praise you. Do y'all remember when David promised to praise the Lord? Oh, let me give it to you. Psalms 34. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall what? Continue to be in my mouth. Now he got a problem, and yet David had to remind himself, God, I promised you that no matter what goes on, I'm going to praise you.